Sunny Creek Bank was the heart of Sunny Creek. It wasn't a big, fancy bank like you see in the city. It was small and friendly, with big windows that let in the sunshine and tellers who knew everyone's name. Mrs. Gable always brought cookies on Fridays, and Mr. Henderson told the silliest jokes while he waited in line. It was a place where people felt safe and comfortable. And then there was Bob. Bob was the janitor, and he loved Sunny Creek Bank almost as much as he loved his collection of bottle caps. He came in early every morning to sweep the floors, polish the counters, and make sure everything was just right. Bob wasn't just a janitor, he was a guardian of Sunny Creek Bank. Bob took his job very seriously. He knew where every speck of dust belonged, which was nowhere, of course, and he could spot a misplaced pen from across the room. He whistled while he worked, a happy little tune that echoed through the quiet bank before it opened its doors for the day. He knew all the tellers by name: Sarah, who always had a smile for everyone; Tom, who could count money faster than anyone Bob had ever seen; and even grumpy old Mr. Fitzwilliam, who secretly had a soft spot for Bob's jokes. Bob considered them his friends, and he always looked out for them. Every morning, Bob would check the silent alarm button under the tellers' counters. It was a small, red button that they could push if something went wrong, if there was a robbery or any kind of trouble. Bob made sure the button was always clean and easy to reach. He hoped they would never have to use it, but he wanted to be sure it was ready just in case. He knew it was his job to keep the bank safe, and that included making sure the silent alarm was working properly. It was a small thing, but Bob knew that even the smallest things could make a big difference. It gave him peace of mind, knowing he was doing his part to protect the people he cared about and the bank that was the heart of Sunny Creek. Little did he know how important that silent alarm would become, or how his keen eyes and observant nature would soon be put to the test. The bell above the bank door jingled, announcing the arrival of 3 new customers. But these weren't Mrs. Gable with her cookies or Mr. Henderson with his jokes. These were, well, they looked like they were trying to be scary robbers, but they weren't doing a very good job. The first one, a tall, lanky fellow with a ski mask pulled too tight, kept tripping over his own feet. He was supposed to be the lookout, but he looked more like he was auditioning for a clown show. The second one, a short, round woman with bright pink hair, kept fidgeting with her oversized purse. Bob could see she was nervous because her hands were shaking. And the third one, well, he was clearly the leader, even though he wasn't much better than the other 2. He had a name, Fingers, which he thought was very intimidating, but he kept calling himself Toes by mistake. "All right, everyone, this is a stick-up," Fingers shouted, his voice cracking in the middle of the sentence. He pointed a wobbly finger, not toe, at Sarah, who was behind the teller counter. "Give us all your money." Sarah, bless her heart, tried to stay calm. She'd always imagined what she would do if this ever happened, and she knew the most important thing was to stay safe. But she couldn't help but notice how ridiculous these robbers looked. The tall one was still tripping, the pink-haired woman was chewing gum like crazy, and Fingers kept mixing up his words. It was hard to take them seriously. Tom, the teller next to Sarah, was trying not to laugh. He had a feeling this wasn't going to be the smoothest robbery in history. Even Mr. Fitzwilliam, who usually looked like he'd swallowed a lemon, had a slight smirk on his face. But even though they looked silly, they were still robbers. They were still dangerous. And Bob, watching from the break room, knew he had to do something. He might be just a janitor, but he wasn't going to let these bumbling bandits hurt his friends or the bank he loved. Fingers, still fumbling with his mask, leaned awkwardly against the counter, accidentally knocking over a pen holder. Pens scattered everywhere, rolling across the floor like tiny, colorful escapees. The pink-haired robber gasped, dropping her purse with a loud thud. Coins and lipstick tubes spilled out, adding to the chaotic scene. The tall, clumsy lookout, trying to help, tripped over the purse and landed in a heap near Mrs. Gable, who had just come in to deposit her bingo winnings. Sarah, remembering Bob's careful attention to the silent alarm, subtly reached under the counter. Her fingers fumbled for the small, red button. She pressed it firmly, hoping to alert the police. Nothing. She pressed it again, harder this time. Still nothing. A tiny flicker of panic sparked in her chest. The silent alarm wasn't working. She glanced at Tom, who raised his eyebrows in confusion. He had seen her press the button but knew something was wrong when no lights flashed or sirens wailed. He discreetly shook his head, confirming her worst fear. The silent alarm, the one thing they relied on in case of emergency, was completely useless. Bob, watching all of this unfold from the break room, felt a surge of frustration. He had checked that button just this morning. How could it be broken? He knew he couldn't rely on the alarm. He had to think fast. Meanwhile, Fingers was getting increasingly agitated. "Where's the money?" he yelled, his voice rising in pitch. "I said, give us the money." Sarah, trying to buy time, slowly opened her cash drawer. She carefully counted out the bills, her hands trembling slightly. The pink-haired robber, still flustered from dropping her purse, nervously pointed a toy water pistol at Tom. It was pink and sparkly and looked more like a party favor than a weapon. Even Mr. Fitzwilliam seemed to be suppressing a chuckle. This robbery was turning into a complete farce. But Bob knew that even a silly robbery could turn dangerous. He had to do something, and he had to do it now. He glanced around the break room, searching for anything he could use to help. His eyes landed on his trusty mop, and a plan began to form in his mind. Before Bob could put his mop plan into action, something unexpected happened. The tall, clumsy lookout, still recovering from his fall near Mrs. Gable, stumbled again. This time, he accidentally bumped into the teller counter, right where Tom was standing. In his flailing attempt to regain his balance, his elbow connected squarely with the silent alarm button. Everyone froze. Sarah and Tom exchanged worried glances. Surely, this time the alarm would go off. But, silence. Absolutely nothing happened. No flashing lights, no blaring sirens, just the awkward silence of a failed robbery attempt. Fingers, oblivious to the near miss, continued to demand money from Sarah. "Hurry up. We don't have all day," he barked, completely unaware that his lookout had just inadvertently tried, and failed, to alert the authorities. The pink-haired robber, still pointing her sparkly water pistol at Tom, looked equally clueless. She seemed more concerned about retrieving her spilled lipstick than the fact that they were committing a crime. Bob, in the break room, couldn't believe his eyes. Not only had the alarm failed when Sarah pressed it, but now the lookout had accidentally bumped it, and it still didn't work. It was like the universe was conspiring to make this the most ridiculous and frustrating robbery in history. He gripped his mop handle tighter. He knew he couldn't wait any longer. The robbers, despite their incompetence, were still a threat. He had to protect his friends and the bank, even if it meant using his trusty mop as a weapon. He took a deep breath, steeled his nerves, and prepared to emerge from the break room, ready to face the bumbling bandits head-on. He knew his plan was a little crazy, but he had a feeling it just might work. After all, these robbers didn't seem prepared for anything, let alone a janitor armed with a mop. It was time for Bob the janitor to become Bob the hero. Sarah, her hands shaking only slightly now, continued to carefully count out the money. She tried to make it look like she was complying, but in her mind, she was calculating how long it would take Bob to get into position with his mop. She hoped he had a good plan. "Hurry, hurry." Fingers urged, tapping his foot impatiently. He was starting to sweat, and his voice was getting even higher. It was clear he was more nervous than anyone else in the bank. He kept glancing at the door, as if expecting someone to burst in and stop them. The pink-haired robber, whose name was apparently Brenda, Bob had overheard her call herself that earlier, was now meticulously reapplying her lipstick, using the reflection in Tom's glasses. She seemed completely detached from the robbery, more concerned with her appearance than the potential consequences of their actions. The tall, clumsy lookout, whose name was probably something equally ridiculous, was still trying to pick up the scattered pens. He kept dropping them, and each time he bent over, his ski mask slipped further down his face, almost completely obscuring his vision. "Is that all you've got?" Fingers demanded, peering into Sarah's cash drawer. "We need more than that. This is a bank, not a piggy bank." Sarah bit back a retort. She knew it wasn't smart to antagonize the robbers, even if they were incredibly inept. She just wanted to get this over with and make sure everyone was safe. Tom, seeing Sarah's distress, subtly slid a stack of larger bills across the counter, hoping to appease Fingers and speed things along. He just wanted them out of the bank before things escalated any further. Fingers grabbed the money, stuffing it haphazardly into a burlap sack he had brought with him. The sack was old and patched, with a large hole in the bottom. As he stuffed the money in, some of the bills started to fall out onto the floor. "Oops," Fingers said sheepishly, scrambling to pick up the loose bills. He looked more like a kid trying to clean up a mess than a hardened criminal. Bob, watching from the break room, couldn't help but feel a little sorry for these guys. They were clearly in over their heads. But he knew he couldn't let his sympathy cloud his judgment. They were still robbing a bank, and he had to stop them. Mop in hand, he prepared to make his move. It was showtime. Bob took a deep breath, his heart pounding in his chest like a drum solo. He was scared, no doubt about it. These were still robbers, even if they were the silliest robbers he had ever seen. He thought about Mrs. Gable, who always brought him cookies, and Sarah, who always had a kind word for him, and even Mr. Fitzwilliam, who secretly chuckled at his jokes. He couldn't let anything happen to them. He remembered the day he had started working at Sunny Creek Bank. Mr. Henderson, the bank manager at the time, had shaken his hand and said, "Bob, you're part of the Sunny Creek family now. It's your job to help keep this place safe and sound." Bob had taken those words to heart. He wasn't just a janitor, he was a protector of the bank. He had promised Mr. Henderson, and himself, that he would do everything in his power to keep Sunny Creek Bank safe. And now, that promise was being put to the test. He peeked through the crack in the break room door one last time. Fingers was still stuffing money into the leaky burlap sack, Brenda was still applying lipstick, and the clumsy lookout was still fumbling with the pens. They were almost ready to leave. Bob knew he had to act quickly. He couldn't let them escape with the money. He had to stop them before they could hurt anyone. He gripped the mop handle even tighter, his knuckles turning white. He was just a simple janitor, but he was about to become something more. He thought about his bottle cap collection, each one carefully cleaned and organized. He thought about his quiet evenings spent reading mystery novels. He thought about the peacefulness of Sunny Creek, the friendly faces, and the sense of community he felt every day. He wasn't going to let these robbers take that away. He straightened his back, took another deep breath, and pushed open the break room door. "All right, you bandits," he shouted, his voice surprisingly loud and firm. "This is where it ends." The robbers froze, startled by the sudden interruption. They turned to face Bob, their eyes wide with surprise. Bob stood there, mop in hand, ready to defend Sunny Creek Bank. It was time for the showdown. The fate of Sunny Creek Bank rested on the shoulders of its humble, mop-wielding janitor. Fingers yelped, dropping the already leaky burlap sack. Brenda shrieked, nearly poking herself in the eye with her lipstick. The tall lookout, startled by Bob's booming voice, tripped over his own feet yet again, sending a shower of pens flying through the air. Bob, seizing the opportunity, charged forward, wielding his mop like a knight's lance. He aimed for Fingers, hoping to knock the burlap sack out of his hands. But Fingers, in a moment of surprising agility, ducked, and the mop sailed harmlessly over his head. Instead, the mop collided with Brenda, knocking her off balance. She stumbled backward, crashing into a display of Sunny Creek Bank coffee mugs, sending them shattering to the floor. The sound of breaking ceramic filled the air. The tall lookout, still trying to regain his footing, accidentally stepped on one of the shattered mugs, letting out a yelp of pain. He hopped around on one foot, clutching his injured toe. Seeing that his carefully planned attack had gone slightly awry, Bob decided to improvise. He swung the mop around, using it to herd the robbers towards the door. "Get out of here," he yelled. "And don't come back." The robbers, thoroughly disoriented and overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events, didn't need any further encouragement. Fingers grabbed the burlap sack, still leaking money. Brenda snatched up her purse, and the tall lookout limped towards the exit, leaving a trail of scattered pens and broken coffee mugs in their wake. They burst out of the bank and scrambled into a beat-up ice cream truck parked haphazardly on the curb. The truck was painted a faded pink, with peeling pictures of smiling cartoon animals. It looked like it hadn't been washed in years. The engine sputtered to life, emitting a cloud of black smoke. The robbers piled inside, slamming the doors shut. Fingers struggled to start the engine, grinding the gears with a loud, grating noise. Finally, with a lurch and a roar, the ice cream truck sped away, leaving Bob standing on the sidewalk, mop in hand, watching them disappear down the street. Money fluttered from the leaky burlap sack, scattering across the road like confetti. The robbers had escaped, but Bob had managed to prevent them from doing any serious harm. He had defended Sunny Creek Bank, just like he had promised. He took a deep breath, feeling a mix of relief and exhaustion. The showdown was over, for now. Sirens wailed in the distance, growing louder as the police cars raced towards Sunny Creek Bank. Soon, flashing lights filled the street, reflecting off the broken coffee mugs and scattered pens. Two police officers, Officer Miller and Officer Jones, hurried into the bank, their faces grim. "What happened here?" Officer Miller asked, surveying the chaotic scene. "Are you all right?" Sarah, still shaken but unharmed, explained what had happened, recounting the bumbling robbery and Bob's brave intervention. Tom nodded in agreement, adding details about the robbers' ineptitude. Even Mr. Fitzwilliam offered a few gruff words, admitting that it had been quite a spectacle. Officer Jones, meanwhile, examined the silent alarm button under the teller counter. He pressed it several times, but nothing happened. He frowned. "This isn't working," he said. "Did anyone press this during the robbery?" Sarah and Tom both confirmed that they had, but the alarm had failed to activate. Officer Jones shook his head. "That's not good," he said. "That alarm is supposed to be our first line of defense." Officer Miller, after hearing the whole story, turned to Bob. "You did a brave thing, Bob," he said. "You could have been seriously hurt." Bob shrugged, still clutching his mop. "I just did what I had to do," he said. "I promised to keep this bank safe." Despite Bob's heroism, everyone was upset about the failed alarm. It was a major security breach, and it could have had serious consequences. The bank manager, Mrs. Peterson, arrived, her face pale with worry. "How could this happen?" she exclaimed. "We rely on that alarm to protect us." Officer Jones assured her that they would investigate the matter thoroughly. He promised to find out why the alarm had failed and take steps to prevent it from happening again. As the police officers began to gather evidence and interview witnesses, Bob started to clean up the mess. He swept up the broken coffee mugs, picked up the scattered pens, and mopped the floor. It was his job to restore order to Sunny Creek Bank, and he took pride in doing it, even after such a chaotic event. But as he cleaned, Bob couldn't shake the feeling that something wasn't right. The robbers had been so clumsy and disorganized. It was almost as if they hadn't really cared about getting away with the money. It was a strange feeling, but Bob couldn't ignore it. Something about this robbery just didn't add up. And as he would soon discover, the real mystery was just beginning. With the police investigation underway, Bob continued to clean, his mind still racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was off about the robbery. The robbers had been so ridiculously bad at it, and the silent alarm's failure seemed too convenient. It was like a poorly acted play, with something important hidden beneath the surface. As he tidied up the break room, he noticed something that made his eyebrows shoot up in surprise. A new locker stood against the far wall, tucked in a corner near the coffee machine. It was a small, metal locker, painted a dull gray. It looked brand new, almost too new. Bob knew every inch of the break room. He had cleaned it every day for the past 5 years. He knew where every chair, every table, every coffee stain belonged. And he knew for a fact that there had never been a locker in that corner before. He stopped sweeping and stared at the locker, his mind working furiously. Where had it come from? Who had put it there? And why? It definitely wasn't there this morning when he had done his regular cleaning. He walked over to the locker and examined it more closely. It was plain and unremarkable, with a simple combination lock. There were no markings, no scratches, no anything to indicate who it belonged to. Bob felt a shiver run down his spine. The locker hadn't been there before the robbery. Now it was. Could it be connected to the robbers? Had they used it to store something? Or maybe, just maybe, had they hidden something inside it? His mind raced. He remembered how nervous Fingers had seemed, how Brenda had been more concerned with her lipstick than the robbery, and how the tall lookout had tripped over everything in sight. It was almost as if they were trying to distract everyone from something else. Could the locker be that something else? Was it possible that they hadn't been after the money at all? Was there something else they were trying to accomplish, and the robbery was just a cover? Bob knew he had to investigate. He couldn't just ignore the locker. He had a feeling that it held the key to solving the mystery of the Sunny Creek Bank robbery. But he also knew that he had to be careful. If the robbers were involved, they might still be watching. He had to proceed with caution. He had to figure out a way to open the locker without alerting anyone. It was time for Bob the janitor to become Bob the detective. Bob glanced around the break room, making sure he was alone. Officer Miller and Officer Jones were still busy interviewing Mrs. Peterson near the teller counters. Sarah and Tom were helping customers, trying to reassure them that everything was under control. Now was his chance. He walked over to the locker and reached for the combination lock. He tried a few random combinations, hoping that maybe, just maybe, the robbers had been as careless with the lock as they had been with everything else. But no luck. The lock remained firmly closed. He tried jiggling the handle, hoping to force it open. He even tried kicking the locker lightly, but it wouldn't budge. The locker was definitely locked tight. As he struggled with the lock, Bob felt a strange sensation, a funny feeling deep in his gut. It was a feeling he had learned to trust over the years. It was the feeling that told him something was wrong, that something wasn't as it seemed. He stepped back from the locker, his mind racing. He knew he couldn't open it on his own. He also knew that he couldn't just leave it there. It was too suspicious, too out of place. He had to do something, but what? He thought about trying to find the combination. But how? He didn't know who owned the locker, or where they might have gotten the combination. He could try picking the lock, but he didn't have any tools, and he didn't know how to pick a lock anyway. He paced back and forth in front of the locker, his brow furrowed in concentration. He knew he couldn't handle this on his own. He needed help. He needed someone with the authority and the expertise to open the locker and find out what was inside. He made a decision. He knew it might seem like an overreaction, but he couldn't take any chances. He walked over to the break room phone and picked up the receiver. He dialed the Sunny Creek Police Department. "Hello," he said, his voice slightly trembling. "This is Bob Johnson, the janitor at Sunny Creek Bank. I think we might have a problem." He explained about the new locker, about how it had appeared after the robbery, and about his suspicions that it might be connected to the robbers. He told them about his funny feeling, about how something just didn't seem right. The dispatcher listened patiently, taking down all the details. "Okay, Mr. Johnson," she said. "We'll send an officer over right away to check it out." Bob hung up the phone, feeling a mix of relief and anxiety. He had done the right thing, he knew he had. But he couldn't help but worry about what the police might find inside that locker. He just hoped it wasn't anything too dangerous. The mystery of the new locker was about to be solved. A few minutes later, Officer Miller and Officer Jones returned to the break room, their faces etched with a mixture of curiosity and skepticism. "So, Mr. Johnson," Officer Miller said, leaning against the doorway. "You said there's a new locker in here?" Bob nodded, pointing towards the gray metal box in the corner. "Yes, sir. It wasn't here this morning. I'm sure of it." Officer Jones walked over to the locker and gave it a cursory glance. "Looks like just a regular locker to me," he said. "Probably belongs to one of the employees." "But it doesn't," Bob insisted. "I know all the employees here. None of them brought in a new locker today." Officer Miller shrugged. "Maybe someone just forgot to mention it," he said. "It happens." Bob could tell that the officers weren't taking him seriously. They probably thought he was just an overzealous janitor, seeing conspiracies where there were none. But he knew he was right. Something was definitely wrong with that locker. "Please, officers," Bob pleaded. "Just take a look inside. I have a feeling it's important." Officer Jones sighed. "Mr. Johnson, we're busy investigating a bank robbery," he said. "We don't have time to go around opening every locker in the break room." Bob refused to give up. He knew he had to convince them. "But that's just it, officer," he said. "I think this locker is connected to the robbery. I think the robbers might have put something inside it." He explained again how clumsy and disorganized the robbers had been, how the silent alarm had failed, and how he had a funny feeling about the whole thing. He emphasized that the locker had appeared suddenly, out of nowhere, and that it was too much of a coincidence to ignore. Officer Miller and Officer Jones exchanged glances. They could see that Bob was genuinely concerned, and they knew he was a reliable and trustworthy person. They also knew that sometimes, the smallest clues could lead to the biggest breakthroughs. "All right, Mr. Johnson," Officer Miller said finally. "We'll take a look. But if it's just someone's lunchbox, we're holding you responsible for wasting our time." Bob smiled gratefully. "Thank you, officers," he said. "I appreciate it." Officer Jones pulled out a small tool kit from his patrol bag. He examined the combination lock on the locker, trying to determine the best way to open it. "Stand back, Mr. Johnson," he said. "This might take a few minutes." Bob stepped back, his heart pounding with anticipation. He knew that whatever was inside that locker could change everything. The truth about the Sunny Creek Bank robbery was about to be revealed. Officer Jones worked patiently with his tools, trying different techniques to pick the lock. He inserted a thin metal pick into the keyhole, wiggling it gently. He listened intently, his ear close to the lock, trying to hear the faint clicks that would indicate success. Bob watched anxiously, his heart pounding in his chest. He could feel the tension in the room, the anticipation hanging heavy in the air. He knew that whatever was inside that locker could change everything. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, Officer Jones let out a soft grunt of satisfaction. "Got it," he exclaimed, stepping back from the locker. He reached for the handle and pulled the locker door open. Bob held his breath, peering inside. The locker wasn't filled with a lunchbox, or old newspapers, or forgotten gym clothes. Instead, it was packed with bags. Big, heavy bags made of thick canvas. Officer Jones reached into the locker and pulled out one of the bags. He opened it carefully, and both he and Bob gasped in surprise. The bag was filled with money. Bundles of crisp, new bills, neatly stacked and secured with rubber bands. There were hundreds, maybe thousands, of dollars in that one bag alone. Officer Jones pulled out another bag, and another, and another. Each one was filled with money. It was the stolen cash from Sunny Creek Bank. "Well, I'll be," Officer Miller said, his eyes wide with astonishment. They hid the money in here. Bob couldn't believe it. He had been right all along. The locker was connected to the robbery. The robbers had used it to stash the stolen cash. But why? Bob wondered aloud. Why would they hide the money in the bank break room? That doesn't make any sense. Officer Jones shook his head. It doesn't, he agreed. Unless they were planning to come back for it later. He thought for a moment, tapping his chin thoughtfully. Maybe they didn't want to risk taking all the money with them in the ice cream truck, he said. Maybe they figured it would be safer to hide it here and retrieve it later, when the coast was clear. Bob nodded slowly. That made sense. The robbers had been so clumsy and disorganized, it was possible they hadn't even had a plan for what to do with the money once they had it. So, what do we do now? Bob asked. Officer Miller smiled. Now, Mr. Johnson, he said. We catch those robbers. The discovery of the stolen cash in the locker had given them the break they needed. It was only a matter of time before they tracked down Fingers, Brenda, and the clumsy lookout and brought them to justice. The Sunny Creek Bank robbery was about to be solved, thanks to the quick thinking and keen observation skills of one very observant janitor. As Officer Jones carefully removed the bags of money from the locker, Officer Miller began to examine the inside of the locker more closely. He was looking for anything that might provide a clue to the robbers' identity or their whereabouts. Hold on a second, he said, reaching into the back of the locker. What's this? He pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. It was a note, written in messy handwriting. It read, "Meet at the usual place. Don't forget the ice cream." Officer Miller chuckled. Ice cream, he said. These guys are robbing a bank, and they're worried about ice cream. Bob couldn't help but smile. It was just like those robbers to be thinking about ice cream in the middle of a heist. Officer Jones examined the note more closely. There's something else here, he said. Looks like an ice cream wrapper. He carefully unfolded the wrapper, revealing the logo of Sweet Surrender Ice Cream, a local ice cream parlor located just outside of Sunny Creek. Sweet Surrender, Officer Miller said. That's our lead. He grabbed his radio and contacted the police dispatcher. Dispatch, this is Officer Miller, he said. We need you to put out an all-points bulletin for a beat-up pink ice cream truck, possibly associated with the Sweet Surrender Ice Cream Parlor. We believe it may be connected to the Sunny Creek Bank robbery. The dispatcher acknowledged the request and promised to alert all patrol units in the area. Officer Miller turned to Bob. Thanks to you, Mr. Johnson, he said. We're one step closer to catching those robbers. Bob beamed with pride. He had played a crucial role in solving the mystery of the Sunny Creek Bank robbery. He was no longer just Bob the janitor, he was Bob the hero. The police officers quickly gathered the bags of money and secured the locker. They thanked Bob again for his help and promised to keep him updated on their progress. As the officers left the bank, Bob couldn't help but feel a sense of excitement. He knew that the robbers wouldn't get away with their crime. The police were on their trail, and it was only a matter of time before they were brought to justice. And it was all thanks to a new locker, a funny feeling, and one very observant janitor. The ice cream truck, with its bumbling occupants, was about to face the music. It didn't take long for the police to spot the distinctive pink ice cream truck. A patrol car cruising on the outskirts of Sunny Creek noticed the vehicle parked near an abandoned ice cream factory, its faded paint peeling and its tires flat. The factory, once a bustling hub of sweet treats, had been closed down for years, leaving behind a decaying shell of its former glory. Officer Miller and Officer Jones arrived at the scene, their sirens silent as they approached the factory. They parked their patrol cars a short distance away and cautiously approached the building on foot, their guns drawn. They could hear voices coming from inside the factory, muffled but distinct. They crept closer, peering through a broken window. Inside, they saw Fingers, Brenda, and the tall, clumsy lookout huddled around a table, surrounded by bags of money. They were arguing loudly, their voices filled with anger and resentment. "I deserve the biggest share." Fingers was shouting. "I was the leader. I planned the whole thing." "Planned the whole thing?" Brenda scoffed. "You couldn't even remember to call yourself Fingers. You kept saying Toes." "And what about me?" the tall lookout whined, rubbing his sore toe. "I tripped over everything. I deserve extra for my pain and suffering." "You tripped over everything because you're a klutz," Fingers retorted. "That's not my problem." The argument escalated, with each robber trying to claim a larger share of the stolen cash. They were so engrossed in their squabble that they didn't notice the police officers approaching the building. Officer Miller and Officer Jones exchanged glances. They couldn't believe how foolish these robbers were. They were literally arguing over the spoils of their crime, making it even easier for the police to catch them. The officers quietly positioned themselves around the factory, making sure there was no escape route. They were ready to move in and apprehend the bumbling bandits. The ice cream-loving, bank-robbing trio was about to get a taste of justice. The abandoned ice cream factory, once a place of sweet dreams, was about to become a scene of bitter reality. "All right, you three," Officer Miller shouted, bursting through the factory door, his gun drawn. "Freeze! You're under arrest." The robbers, startled by the sudden intrusion, jumped up from the table, scattering money everywhere. Fingers tripped over a bag of cash, sending bills flying through the air like confetti. Brenda shrieked, dropping her lipstick. The tall lookout, still favoring his sore toe, hopped around in a panic. "It's the cops!" Fingers yelled, his voice filled with desperation. "Run for it!" But running was easier said than done. The robbers were so clumsy and disorganized that they couldn't even make a coordinated escape attempt. Fingers ran headfirst into a stack of old ice cream cartons, sending them tumbling to the floor. Brenda tripped over a loose floorboard, sprawling on the ground. The tall lookout, still hopping on one foot, stumbled into Brenda, causing them both to crash into a pile of rusty ice cream scoops. Officer Jones, who had entered the factory through a back door, quickly apprehended Fingers, who was still tangled in the ice cream cartons. Officer Miller easily subdued Brenda and the tall lookout, who were too busy trying to untangle themselves from the pile of ice cream scoops to put up any resistance. The arrest was surprisingly easy. The robbers were so inept and uncoordinated that it was almost comical. It was as if they were deliberately trying to make it as easy as possible for the police to catch them. "You have the right to remain silent," Officer Miller said, reading the robbers their Miranda rights. "Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law." The robbers, looking dejected and defeated, offered no resistance as the officers handcuffed them and led them out of the factory. As they were being escorted to the patrol cars, Fingers turned to Brenda and the tall lookout. "I told you this was a bad idea," he said. "I knew we should have just stuck to selling lemonade." Brenda rolled her eyes. "Lemonade? We would have been bankrupt in a week." The tall lookout just sighed and rubbed his sore toe. The police officers loaded the robbers into the patrol cars and drove them away, leaving behind the abandoned ice cream factory and the scattered remains of their failed heist. The Sunny Creek Bank robbery was officially solved. And it was all thanks to the quick thinking and keen observation skills of one very special janitor. The bumbling bandits were finally off to jail, leaving Sunny Creek safe and sound. Back at Sunny Creek Bank, the atmosphere was one of celebration. The news of the robbers' arrest had spread quickly, and everyone was relieved and grateful. Mrs. Peterson, the bank manager, was especially overjoyed. "Bob," she said, her voice filled with emotion, "you're a hero. You saved our bank. We don't know what we would have done without you." Sarah and Tom rushed over to thank Bob, showering him with praise and gratitude. Even Mr. Fitzwilliam cracked a smile, patting Bob on the back and muttering something about doing a good job. The local newspaper, the Sunny Creek Gazette, ran a front-page story about the bank robbery, with a large photo of Bob holding his trusty mop. The headline read, "Janitor Saves Sunny Creek Bank." Bob became an instant celebrity. People stopped him on the street to shake his hand and thank him for his bravery. Kids asked for his autograph. Even the mayor of Sunny Creek called to congratulate him. But Bob remained humble, deflecting the praise and insisting that he had just done what anyone would have done. "I just wanted to keep my friends and the bank safe," he said. "That's all that matters." Mrs. Peterson, determined to show her appreciation, decided to throw Bob a hero's party at the bank. She decorated the break room with balloons and streamers, and she ordered a huge cake from Sweet Surrender Ice Cream. The owner was very grateful that the robbers had been caught. Everyone in Sunny Creek was invited to the party. Customers, employees, police officers, even Mrs. Gable, who brought her famous cookies. The break room was packed with people, all eager to celebrate Bob's heroism. During the party, Mrs. Peterson presented Bob with a special award, the Sunny Creek Bank Medal of Valor. It was a small, gold medal engraved with the words, "For courage and dedication." Bob was deeply touched by the honor. He accepted the medal with a humble smile, thanking everyone for their support. As the party drew to a close, Bob stood up to say a few words. "I just want to say thank you to all of you," he said, his voice slightly choked with emotion. "Sunny Creek Bank is more than just a job to me. It's my home, and you're all my family. I'm proud to be a part of this community, and I'll always do everything in my power to keep it safe." The crowd erupted in applause, cheering and clapping for their hometown hero. Bob the janitor had become a legend. The mop-wielding protector of Sunny Creek Bank. And he had earned it all with his quick thinking, his keen observation skills, and his unwavering dedication to his community. The party was a resounding success, a testament to Bob's bravery and the close-knit spirit of Sunny Creek. Life in Sunny Creek slowly returned to normal after the excitement of the bank robbery. The broken coffee mugs were replaced, the scattered pens were picked up, and the stolen money was safely returned to the bank. The silent alarm was fixed, and Mrs. Peterson made sure to check it every day, just to be safe. She even installed a new security system, complete with cameras and motion sensors. Fingers, Brenda, and the tall lookout were sentenced to community service, which involved cleaning up the abandoned ice cream factory. They were often seen sweeping the floors and scrubbing the walls, looking thoroughly miserable. As for Bob, he continued to work as the janitor at Sunny Creek Bank, but now he was more than just a janitor. He was a local hero, a symbol of courage and dedication. He still came in early every morning to sweep the floors and polish the counters, whistling his happy little tune. He still chatted with Sarah and Tom, and he still made Mr. Fitzwilliam chuckle with his jokes. But now, he also kept a closer eye on things. He was more observant, more vigilant. He knew that even in the quietest of towns, trouble could always be lurking around the corner. He paid special attention to the break room, making sure that everything was in its place. He checked the new lockers regularly, just to make sure there were no surprises. He also continued to check the silent alarm button, making sure it was always working properly. He never wanted to experience another bank robbery, but he knew that he had to be prepared, just in case. Bob the janitor, the mop-wielding protector of Sunny Creek Bank, was always ready to help, always ready to defend his community. He had proven that even the most ordinary person could be capable of extraordinary things. And so, Sunny Creek Bank remained safe and sound, a beacon of hope and stability in a sometimes unpredictable world. And Bob, the humble janitor, continued to keep a watchful eye, always ready to lend a hand, always ready to protect the people he cared about. The end. Or perhaps, just the beginning of another adventure for Bob, the hero of Sunny Creek. Because in a small town like Sunny Creek, anything was possible. Especially when you had a janitor like Bob looking out for you. The happy ending, sealed with a smile and a freshly mopped floor, was a testament to the spirit of Sunny Creek and the unwavering dedication of its hometown hero.